Hopefully Husam and I will touch on how, and Angus, that we have decided to do 20-minute neighbourhoods in a sort of urban rural context. For those that don't know me, I'm Antony McGuinness. I'm the Service Manager for Development Planning, Environment and Climate Change in Angus Council. And what I'm going to take you through is a bit of a scene setting of the work that we've been doing with the University of Dundee. Some of this Husam might touch on in greater detail in his presentation, and the students will touch on it in much greater detail later on. So, for a lot of people might not know where Angus is, we're located in the northeast of Scotland. We're sandwiched in between Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire, Perth and Kinross and Dundee, and where Cairngorms National Park is one of our boundaries as well. So we're located up there. That shows we're quite well linked with public transport. Sorry about the airport one. It's not really climate change, but it kind of shows you where we are. So we're located right slap bang in the northeast of Scotland. Some facts. We're a fairly small authority area. We've got a population of 116,000 people. We've got 7 main towns, all with different characters, all with different history. We're a rich and varied natural environment. We've got lots of agriculture and food production in the northeast of Scotland. We provide Sainsbury's with the majority of their berries, if anybody wants to know, and potatoes. A lot of agricultural livestock, from pigs, cows, cattle, all of that sort of thing. And we've got a lot of built environment and coast. And I would get shot by our members if I didn't say the Declaration of Arbroath was signed in Angus in 1320, which marked Scotland's establishment of an independent nation at that time. If you are up in Angus, you will see in very many signs the birthplace of Scotland. So I have to say that as a little aside. So context, what we were looking at for our next local development plan. And we were looking at very firmly in the context of National Planning Framework 4. So this is all the things that National Planning Framework 4 says you have to look at, the key policy links and the 3 themes with all of the things that local development plans should do in them. But for us, the guiding principles are addressing climate change first and foremost, green infrastructure first, and to create places and peoples for our communities, from children all the way through to our elderly population. These were the guiding principles that the students were set for the next local development plan in the context of NPF 4. So the project brief, this was a very challenging brief for the students. The students come from all over the globe. It's not their first time looking at cities, because some of them are beyond cities, but it is the first time for many of them looking at concepts such as urban design, housing, rural, environment and climate change in a predominantly rural area. So it's completely alien to a lot of them. But what they have produced, I'm sure you'll see, is actually mind-blowing. But the project brief itself was to devise a strategy and designed for how Montefieth, which is the nearest town to Dundee, it's pretty much directly adjoining to Broughty Ferry, and the villages all around the Dundee city boundary. Dundee city is quite tightly bound with Angus predominantly around it and Perth and Kinross to the west. What we wanted to look at was how these surrounding villages and Montefieth and smaller rural settlements in between them might grow and function, and how we are going to do 20-minute neighbourhoods, which is in a connected communities approach, where all the communities share the facilities and travel between them. They therefore support things such as rural schools staying open. And in that context, because NPF 4 sets a minimum housing number, in the South Angus area of the district, we were looking at how could we sustainably produce 1,200 houses within that connected communities concept and local living and all the infrastructure to do that over a 20-year period. So moving on, this was the project area. The blue line shows you where Dundee city boundary is. The red lines are the settlements. So this one's Montefieth. This is one of the largest towns in Angus. It's directly adjacent to the beach. It has a main train line and it's on a direct bus route. But the rest of the villages have different transport issues, different locational issues, different infrastructure issues. Moniki is where the sort of country park is. It's a main tourist attraction. And some of these are the settlements that are coming under pressure for development going forward. So within that, the aim was to pursue a critical and creative approach for the students to investigate how best to use this 20-minute neighbourhood connected communities concept to improve the quality and livability of our smaller towns and rural settlements and their constituent neighbourhoods. What they looked at within this brief, because it was quite challenging, was these NPF 4 themes. pretty much all of them they looked at in the context of what they were tasked with doing. That will set the scene for what Husam is coming on to and what the students will do. But it was an extremely challenging brief, one of the most extremely challenging briefs that the Masters in Spatial Planning and Sustainable Urban Design have ever been set. So I'm not going to give too much away, but all I'm going to do is say thank you to all the students for all their hard work and effort in this concept thing. They all had fun, we all had a blast, and I would also like to thank the team behind them, which Husam will come on. So that's me setting the scene, and I will take questions after Husam does. So hopefully I haven't repeated much of what Husam was going to say. So I'm just going to stop sharing, Husam, if you want to start.
Thank you. It seems to me someone has raised his hand 2 or 3 times. Just I thought I should mention this.
I think we're taking question and answers after the students' work, so if people can just hold their hands, that would be great.
Okay, can you see the slide and you hear me, I believe? Yes? Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Husam Al Waer. Apologies, you may see the way I will deliver it a little bit slow. I am just fasting and only 10% remain in my energy, if I may say. We've been flat out the last 3 days. Me and the students try to prepare for this. And I would like to thank everyone, the audience, but also the organizers for the opportunity to present this work. To start with, I just would like to say something about what we mean by the Civic Urban Design Laboratory, which is we established this year between Dundee University and Angus Council. Before I start, if you allow me to say, I just published this paper 3-4 weeks ago. It is at the heart of the challenges and aspiration and opportunities we have with reference to the 20 minutes neighborhood. I will be circulating this one later on. Now, the urban lab itself, it wasn't, if I may say, it was a joint initiatives between university and Angus Council with support from really key practitioners here in the UK, and all like Kevin Murray, Stephen Proctor, Jill, Anthony, but also Stephen Wallacey from Orhorse and Robert Haxford from Urban Design Group. I think we have looked at the context. I will explain it a little bit, but in principle, the beauty of the urban lab, it did allow us to use Angus this time round as a live rural living in environment, bringing local government policies, but also looking at business issues, local communities, aspirations. So the students really, how do you want me to say, dealt with life issues, life challenge, rather than academic theoretical one. It wasn't new for us, if I may say, the concept of urban laboratory. It was on the back of what the great work we did with Perth Council, Damascus internationally, but also the work we did recently as well with Dundee City Council, looking at the concept of 20 minutes neighborhood at both local authorities in Perth and in Dundee. This year we have had around 60 students from a truly interdisciplinary backgrounds: architects, planners, landscape architects, urban management, health and well-being engineers, and so on, from all the globe, if I may say, with different set of skills as well and competencies. As Anthony said, it really was a very challenging one, and it put all of us, including the team, under huge pressure, because as you can see, uncertainty is an uncomfortable position, but we were aware that certainty is an absurd one as well. Let me start with this, quite important. You may find this is a bit different. To me, when you talk about rural contexts and ruralness, I think when it's come to the SDGs, there are 3 sets of issues. The importance of infrastructure and reliable infrastructure in order to support economic and human well-being, with a focus on affordable and equitable access for all. The second one, we are all aware of it, the sustainable cities and communities, but the importance of having integrated and settlement and sustainable human settlement planning and management. But also the number 15, I found it rather interesting when it's come to the rural issues, the life on the lands, the importance of integrated ecosystem and biodiversity, and having universal access to safe and exclusive green and public spaces. So those to me are really three things are key. But what I like, those has been now being embodied in the new national planning framework. And I was so delighted to see for the first time ever the national planning framework highlighted the importance of local living, which become a key spatial principles, which really ask us to densify, to focus on densification, reduce sprawl, protect natural features, and promote local livability. Those three things were really at the heart of the brief, if I may say. However, we did take into account the importance of those dimensions you see in front of you, especially the importance of, for the first time, the National Planning Framework in Scotland highlight the importance of repopulation and increasing the population of rural area of Scotland, but taking into account biodiversity, equality, health, well-being, housing, climate actions. But also we have looked at this inspirational policy for 2050, and I was intrigued with the concept of livability of rural areas, but highlighted the concerns related to access to public and other services, and the importance of establishing networks and social bonds, but also the cost of living. And this really, it was at the heart of Angus' requirements, and which really highlighted as well the importance in stunning scene and landscaping in area like Angus, the importance of sense of location, including views, significant features, and landmark. When it's come to this interesting phrase, livability or livability of rural areas, it struck me, especially in when you go to the edge of Dundee, beyond, and Angus, the importance. Well, okay, all the houses in a way or another now being blotted from from the air, it seems, from private sectors with a very, very low density of 15 up to 20 maximum. And driven by this concept of zoning where everything's separate, no linkages between commercial, residential, or even linkages with historical towns. And this is, as Jan Jacob said, unsuccessful neighborhood is a place that is overwhelmed by its defects and problem and is progressively more helpless before them. So this is the challenge, and this is a challenge for me for all rural areas. Is that the way forward, to leave it in the hands of the private sectors with the low density, with no facilities or services? And this is, to me, really will require, regardless whether you call it connected neighborhood, community, or 20 minutes neighborhood, this will require from us as a decision makers a need for new narrative. And I would like to remind everyone with this quote by Gordon Collin: if people live in houses, where do the houses live, especially in rural area? Because if they are homeless, all we are left with is the typical endless, futureless suburbia. So this is, to me, really bringing the local distinctiveness into the game if we are serious about really creating vibrant places with mixing of high streets, mixed density, integration with the green, and so on. One thing we found out as well through intensive research, it's very critical point for me when it's come to the rural context. The configuration of urban structure will determine how this or connected or impermeable it is, because people quickly adapt their behavior and their travel behavior to suit the context of street layouts and the infrastructure they encounter. So if the house's state or a local centers has been insulated against sustainable or direct people-powered movement with maybe cul-de-sacs or boots patterns, then really stakeholders will struggle to engage in active travel. This is, to me, really very clear. Importance of behavior, urban configuration, will really affect dramatically the what I call it, people behavior and patterns of movement within the area and throughout it. Another thing, I was so delighted my colleague Irene mentioned issue of density. Of course, there is no one perfect answers for density, but in Scotland in general, the density we provide so far is really, guys, between 12 up to 20 if you are lucky. That's very low, and that will not create the critical mass we needed to support facilities, services, amenities, bus stop, and so on. We really need to start moving beyond that's average, start talking about 30, 34. But this doesn't mean creating crowded spaces, because to me, density is an outcome, not a determinant. And it should evolve as a consequence of correlating intensity of occupations and uses with accessibility and the proximity to facilities and services. And as Irene said, this is when you go to the rural areas and suburban area, you always see one type of houses. And the problem when you create monofunctional environment, you create then the consequences monofunctional services. We need to have a multi houses meeting different needs, different age, because when you diversify the built environment, you diversify the facilities, services, including transport system. And I need to share this interesting data with you, my colleague. For every 23 homes we built with Scotland, that will have only 50 people. The house size, the Scottish household size in Scotland at the moment is only 2.14 persons. Imagine, only 2.14 persons. And we need to connect that with the economic reality and the viability. To have for a viable a local shop, you need a catchment area of 1,500 people. For a nurse, 2,000. For middle school, around 4,000. For a local center, 6,000. So this will require for us a framing place integrally, looking at it from spirituality, place of what we perceive, physicality, place as a measurable quality, functionality, place as a tangible and intangible context, but also conviviality. That's exactly what the students try to look at in terms of this is a place as a significant share. And this is not new, as Beatrix Geddes use this very interesting transit principle to analyze and address the needs of different types of neighborhoods between rural, suburban, urban core, and urban centers. When it's come to the brief, we challenge the students, where should the urban growth happen? Because Dundee filling up, but when it comes to the Angus, you are really dealing with a very distinctive character in terms of location, history, but also there is that modern community lifestyle. There is a very productive agriculture, land, resorts, some facilities, but also we ask them to challenge themselves. What is the nature of urban edge between Dundee and Angus? But also, we try to, rather than giving them a fixed brief, we ask them, what is the scale of growth? Where and how? Do we put everything in one spot, or do we scatter them? But we have asked them to look at, well, what is the determining factors? Is it the density? Is it the character, the identity? How about the community services and economy? And we gave them some options for them to test and try, because we know there is no one single answer and there is no one correct answer or wrong answers. Is it a single extension of Monifils? Or is a single extension of one of those rural small centers? Or is it a freestanding new settlement on its own? Or can we evenly spread the growth? Or maybe can we establish what we call it a linking clusters? A cluster of different communities, or growth in access? Or can we establish what we call it a network of villages where they support each other? But at the heart of this, yes, policymakers will say living locally. Engineers councils, maybe Sustrans will push for cycling connectivity and issue of the importance of time and catchment, as Irene said. But there is real factors here we have real factors and the challenges we face. The scale of settlements, the connectivity and choices and the quality of infrastructure, the density versus the intensity of uses, residential catchment. How can the ability to support shops and services, proximity to job, working economy, but also we were aware that quality of matters, the journey and the destination, amenity as well as proximity. But also there was the questions, will people want to live there in terms of character, identity, but also sense of belonging? And we found out through this fantastic exercise, 4 things will move a rural settlement on. Firstly, provision, using what we already have. Protection, making sure we don't lose what we already have in terms of character, landscaping, identity. And also propagation, like getting more of what we've got already before we start getting new things, which was also an option. Just little things to say that in Angus, the population is around 116,000 up to now. In Monofis itself, it was the largest, you could say, a small urban town. Around 9,000 people live there. We have looked at the distance between those small little rural settlements. And as you can see, sometimes the distance between 3 up to 4 miles, which is really not bad, and it could be there could be an opportunity for cycling, but the students were aware of the contours and how flexible of the contours. In Monofis, the area was a little bit flat. We have looked at as well the type of houses and what kind of houses available, but also the catchment in terms of the relationship with the schools and nearest centers as well. This is Monofis itself, just to give you a context for it. It has around 9,000 people so far with 3,785 houses. I believe one of the challenge they face at the moment, the aging population. We have looked at as well the housing, the population size between the cluster to do with Moniki and Greigton and Craigton. We have around 207 people only with 84 houses. A new Bigging around 163. King Guinea around 122. Wellbank 660 and Kellas only around 150 people. Yes, there are bus stops, but it runs around 3-4 times a day with limited services in the weekend, and normally after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening, they don't have a bus running on those areas. In terms of what is available, we have looked at the schools. There are around 3 schools, if I may say. Just let me show you exactly the location of those schools. With some small commercial activities, it's just little shops and restaurant here and there. One thing as well, we were very mindful when it's come to climate change, that it has there is a lot of productive agriculture land. So we ask students to look at this carefully, and as well, how can we enhance and keep and maintain the productive agriculture land, and also limit land take as much as we can, and limit the growth in grassland or unproductive land where that's possible. We have asked students really to view the neighborhoods as an ecological habitat, where can the green and nature, can they embrace a human habitat with less land take and reducing environmental impact, but having and discuss different scenarios for density. The students as well use this fantastic exercise of mapping all facilities and services within the first 5 minutes 10 minutes, 15 and 20, and they will say something about this later on. But also we try to show them, well, look, how do we make most of what we have before we start building a new stuff? So looking at really what is positive, what is there, but also what is missing in terms of we found there is issue on possible flood risk, lack of cycling infrastructure, only bus routes. There is loss of some green infrastructure and agriculture land, because some agriculture land becoming so attractive for private sectors at the moment, as well the inclusivity of houses in there. So and then we start really looking at 1 kilometer radius zones versus the 20 minutes walkability distance. The whole idea to see where those little villages may overlap, and where the facilities and services may overlap, and can those villages being clustered, and so they start supporting each other, sharing facilities, sharing services. So the whole idea, we really looked at this concept of rural communities, village clusters, in order really to increase social capitals by really mapping all the current opportunities and assets available in all those little villages, because we were well aware that villages are much stronger when they stand together. But we need to understand what do we mean by standing together, and how can we facilitate that by really exploring different scenario. And one of those scenario we looked at, what if we lived in places of small distances, and the whole idea was creating those rural villages, looking at village cluster and town clusters, and how they could maybe potentially start creating connected community, so they support each other. And we have a lovely input from Stephen Wallacey about the concept and how it may work in the taking into account the specificity of Angus councils. And when we looked at the concept itself, 20 minutes neighborhood is not a physical thing. It's about villages and their citizens, society, clubs, and small organizations and councils. And this is why the students start here mapping different scenarios, saying where the cluster could be established, and how can we circulate then the capitals, which could create really what we call it reconnecting community, and unpacking the construct of land, and unpacking the underutilized facilities and services. And then we zoomed in, looking at how can we improve the connectivity among not only facility and services, but also people and nature. How can we enhance the relationship between the existing blue and green environment to improve people engagement with nature, to uplift the ecological sustainability, or as well to improve the sustainability of the village by means of targeted development, and really having a clear densification strategy, and improve the local and resilience through the use possibly renewable energy where that's possible. But also we looked at the existing assets, because we noticed there is really stunning historical assets which could create what we call it nature trial or tourism and connection. And some of the groups look at that potential, linking Monifees with Monoiki, because that will bring benefit, profit to the community, and that could be put back to improve the infrastructure. So that's exactly what we did. We're trying to build upon local qualities in terms of creating what I call it local cureness and special circumstances, like landscape, culture, history, but also special character. And the last 4 slides I would like to mention, when it's come to rural activeness, attractiveness, this will require holistic based approach, and this will require what I call it creating quality markers. 4 strategy here to me at the heart of rural DNA. The X factor, the good condition to support what I call it an urge to create cohesion in the community, and the quality meeting places. Let me unpack them briefly. The X factor, villages should have what I call it edginess, which is something that villages are known for the outside. When you go to some of those rural communities, they are really well known, sometimes for the cafe, sometimes for the resorts, sometimes for the way they deal with edges, sometimes of the landscaping and the views, sometimes the stones and the materials being used in the character. They have a special quality which add decisive values to the community. So that's X factors cannot be copies. That's what make them distinctive. The second one, urge to create. The place is the framework for this urge to create possible support. These can be events, activities, clubs, society, or even sometimes company or co-creation company. A whole new product of something that is missing in the community. It could be commercial, it could be non-commercial. The cohesion, that's kind of, when you go to some of those places, nearness, openness, helpless, a sense of security, safety, sense of belonging, showing this sense of community with like minds in a completely special places well away from cities. And the last one, meeting places, concrete places that facilitate and communicate meetings between people in the community. So that's what these meeting places give to the community life in the community. So the characteristics of the ruralness is the activities are diverse and easy to participate in, accessible, open, and diverse. Thank you very much, and apologies if I run out of time.